The street outside your window is empty, not the kind of empty that feels peaceful, the kind of empty that feels watched. If you've ever woken up at 3:33 a.m. for no reason, no sound, no notification, no storm, and walked to the kitchen for water, you've probably glanced out the back window. Your yard. The same yard you mowed on Sunday. The same feeder you filled yesterday. But at 3:47 a.m., it doesn't look like your yard anymore. It looks like a stage, and the actors haven't arrived yet, but they're coming. Let me tell you about a man named David, Ohio. Tine 19. He installed a motion-activated camera in his backyard, pointed at his bird feeder. He wanted to see which birds visited before dawn. Innocent enough. On day 4, his camera recorded something at 3:52 a.m. The footage shows a crow land on the feeder. Normal. The crow looks directly at the camera. Normal for crows. They're curious. Then the crow tilts its head, freezes, and turns around, not away from the camera, but toward the empty center of the yard. The crow stays frozen for 11 seconds. Then it flies away fast, not casual. Escape fast. David checked the footage for what the crow saw. Nothing on camera. No animal. No person. No light. But here's what bothers him. 3 years later. He says, the crow wasn't looking at something. It was looking at nothing. And that scared it more than anything I've ever seen. Nothing doesn't scare birds, unless that nothing is actually not nothing. David moved 2 months later. Your yard knows things you don't. Between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., your yard becomes something else entirely. Not haunted. Not supernatural in the Hollywood sense. Something quieter, stranger. Something researchers at Kyoto University accidentally discovered in 2017 when they placed audio recorders in suburban backyards across 3 continents. They were studying pre-dawn bird calls, simple ecology. What they found made one researcher resign. Every single recording between 3:15 a.m. and 4:45 a.m. contained the same anomaly. Not sound, the absence of sound. Micro gaps. Fractions of a second where every bird within range stopped vocalizing, stopped moving, stopped breathing, spontaneously. These gaps happened at irregular intervals, no pattern, no trigger they could measure. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the researcher who left the project, described it in her exit interview. It's as if something passes through the area, not a predator. Predators cause alarm calls. This caused silence. Absolute silence. The birds weren't hiding. They were listening, waiting, judging whether to flee or freeze. She never published her final paper. She now works in pharmaceutical sales. The gaps still happen in your yard, every night. You've never noticed because you're asleep, but the birds notice. And they remember every single gap, every location, every duration. They're mapping something, and you're not on the map. This is where the science gets strange, not boring, not textbook, but genuinely strange. Birds see ultraviolet light. You know this. But you don't know what they see during the pre-dawn hours. At 3:27 a.m., when ambient light is at its lowest, the UV spectrum intensifies relative to visible light. Flowers glow. Insect trails illuminate, but also certain atmospheric disturbances become visible. Thin, rope-like, moving low to the ground. No heat signature, no sound, no physical mass that instruments can detect. But birds react to them. React is too mild a word. Panic is closer. In 2021, a wildlife biologist in Montana placed UV-sensitive cameras in a remote meadow. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the cameras captured something moving through the grass. Not an animal. Not wind. A distortion like heat haze on a summer road, but at ground level, moving deliberately. Changing direction when birds flew near it. The footage sat unanalyzed for 8 months because the biologist assumed it was a lens artifact. Then a colleague noticed something. The distortion moved around the birds. Never through them. Never touched them. Whatever it was knew the birds were there and avoided them. You want the terrifying part? That distortion didn't appear on normal cameras. Only UV, only pre-dawn, and only in yards where birds had nested for more than 3 consecutive years. The birds aren't just living in your yard. They're defending it from something you'll never see. Let's stop for a second. Take a breath. Because the next part changes everything. You felt it. Everyone has. Around 4:12 a.m., you wake up. Not groggy, not confused. Alert. Eyes open. Eyes open. Heart steady. You check your phone. 4:12. You listen. Nothing. Then you feel a pressure change. Like someone heavy walking across your bedroom floor. Except the floor isn't moving. You are alone. But your window is open a crack. And on the sill, a crow is watching you. Not moving. Not breathing loudly. Just watching. When you make eye contact, the crow doesn't fly away. It tilts its head. Once. Then jumps off the sill and disappears into the dark. You think, that was strange. Then you fall back asleep and forget by morning. But the crow didn't forget. Crows remember human faces for years. There's a famous study from the University of Washington where researchers wore caveman masks while trapping and banding crows. Years later, crows who'd never been trapped still attacked anyone wearing the caveman mask. They taught their children, their grandchildren, generational memory. Now apply that to your 4:12 a.m. visitor. That crow wasn't randomly on your windowsill. It was checking on you, making sure you stayed asleep. Because if you had stayed awake, if you had walked to the window and looked into the yard, you would have seen something no human should see. The crow knows what happens out there. It was making sure you didn't find out. What happens out there? Fine. You want a concrete answer? Here's the closest anyone has come. In 2018, a family in rural Pennsylvania installed a baby monitor in their backyard. Not for a baby, for their dog, who slept in a heated kennel. The monitor had night vision and audio recording. On March 14th, between 3:48 a.m. and 4:31 a.m., the monitor recorded something that has never been publicly released. But a local journalist saw the footage before it was confiscated. I'll tell you what he described. The audio first. The dog whimpering. Not barking, not growling. Whimpering, the sound dogs make when they're afraid but can't run. Then a scraping sound, slow, rhythmic, dragging across grass, then silence. The video showed the dog pressed against the back of the kennel, shaking. The yard was empty. No animal, no person. But the grass was moving. Patches of grass flattening in sequence, as if something heavy was stepping through, except nothing was visible. No body, no shadow, just flattened grass appearing in a path from the fence to the kennel, stopping 3 feet from the dog. Then the path reversed, back to the fence. Then nothing. The dog refused to sleep outside again. Ever. The family sold the house 3 weeks later. The journalist who saw the tape, he stopped reporting on paranormal stories. He told a friend, that wasn't paranormal. That was biological. Something alive was in that yard. Something I couldn't see. And the dog saw it. The dog knew its name. Notice what the birds were doing during that 43-minute window. According to neighbors, 3 separate witnesses who happened to be awake, no birds sang. No birds moved. The yard's usual pre-dawn crow population was absent, not sleeping elsewhere. Absent, as if they'd left the area entirely. The birds didn't try to stop whatever happened. They evacuated. And they didn't come back for 2 days. You want escalation? Here it is. What if I told you that between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., your yard isn't the only thing being watched? What if I told you that you are being assessed? Not by birds. By what the birds are afraid of. Dr. Lena Petrov, a parapsychologist at the University of Amsterdam. Yes, that's a real position. No, she doesn't talk to the press. Studied pre-dawn wakefulness for 7 years. She interviewed over 400 people who reported waking consistently between 3:15 and 4:45 a.m. Her findings, never published in a mainstream journal, 83% of her subjects lived within 200 meters of a mature tree where corvids, crows, ravens, jays nested. 83%. She also found that these same subjects reported something strange when asked to draw their dreams. They drew the same shape, not every night, but at least once. A tall, thin shape. Unclear edges. No face. She doesn't speculate what the shape is, but she noted this. Every subject who moved away from their yard stopped waking up at 4 a.m., stopped drawing the shape, reported feeling lighter, safer, but also reported missing something they couldn't name. One woman in her 60s told Dr. Petrov, "I think the birds were keeping something away from me. And when I left, I think that thing stayed in the yard with the new family. I think about them sometimes. I hope they sleep well." She didn't mean it as a threat, but it sounds like one. Let's reframe everything you just heard. Birds remember faces for years. They communicate threat locations across species. They see UV disturbances moving through your grass. They freeze in coordinated silence when something invisible passes through. They evacuate entire neighborhoods when that something gets too close. And they watch your bedroom window at 4:12 a.m. to make sure you don't see it. Now ask yourself the question the scientists won't ask publicly. Are the birds protecting you, or are they protecting themselves? Because if they're protecting you, that means they've decided you're worth keeping alive, which is sweet. Disturbing that they had to make that decision, but sweet. But if they're protecting themselves, if you're just a passive observer and the real target is them, then whatever passes through your yard between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. isn't interested in you at all. You're just furniture. And the birds are the ones in danger, which means the thing in your yard isn't a monster. It's not a demon. It's a predator, a specialized predator that hunts birds during the one window when humans can't interfere, between 3 to 6 a.m. when you're asleep, when the lights are off, when the only witnesses are creatures that can't call for help. The birds don't want you to see what happens in your yard, because if you knew, if you really understood, you'd either try to stop it and get hurt, or you'd realize the birds have been using your property as a hunting ground. Their hunting ground, their territory, their ancient, bloody, pre-dawn ritual. And you're just the landlord who sleeps through the violence. At 5:48 a.m., the robin sings, the crow calls, the finch hits the feeder. Peaceful, normal, safe. But 90 seconds before that first song, something left your yard, moved past the fence, disappeared into the tree line or the neighbor's hedge or the storm drain at the corner. The birds watched it leave, and then, exactly at 5:48 a.m., they exhaled, relaxed, became morning birds again. They never told you it was there. They'll never tell you it's coming back tonight. And they'll certainly never tell you that it's been here longer than you have. Your house was built 5 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago. The birds have nested in that oak tree for 300 years. The thing in your yard has walked that grass since before human feet touched this continent. You are new here. You are temporary. And between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., when you're dreaming of nothing, your yard belongs to something else entirely. Something old, something patient, something that has never once looked at a human and felt anything close to fear. The birds, they're not guards, they're witnesses. And they're very, very careful not to become prey. Tomorrow morning, when the alarm goes off at 7 a.m., you'll make coffee, check your phone, maybe glance out the kitchen window at your ordinary, boring, empty yard. But tonight, somewhere between 3:30, you're going to wake up. You won't know why. You'll lie there in the dark, heart beating normally, eyes open. And on your windowsill, if you listen very closely, you'll hear the soft scrape of claws. A crow. Watching. Waiting. Making sure you close your eyes again. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and found a bird outside your window? Not singing, just looking. Tell me what happened, because I don't think it was a coincidence. And I think the bird remembers you.